Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar with Shark Stop. I'm Ellie. I'm one of the campaign managers here at Birchal. And just before I introduce Andre, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I'm coming to you from today. Birchal is based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Today, I'm joined with Andre from Shark Stop. Birchal is working with Shark Stop on an upcoming crowdsourced funding offer. So, what is crowdsourced funding, or CSF? Crowdsourced funding, or you may know as equity crowdfunding, is a relatively new form of fundraising here in Australia that allows startups and small businesses to raise capital from a large number of smaller or retail investors and wholesale or sophisticated investors through an online platform such as Birchal. Instead of seeking funding from traditional sources such as banks or venture capitalists, companies can turn to the general public, often their communities, to raise in exchange for equity in their businesses. Virtual Financial Services will be the licensed intermediary for the offer. The information and discussion on this webinar is for informational purposes and should not be considered as advice or recommendation to invest. Please always do your own research, always consider the offer document and the general CSF risk warning before investing. And if you want to find out any more information on that, you can head over to our website at birchal.com. Now, how today's session is going to run, Andre is going to take us through a great presentation, which will approximately be about 15 to 20 minutes, all about SharkStop, where they've come from, what they're looking to do with their capital raise. We will then switch over to a Q&A session. So if you look down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a little Q&A bubble. If you have any questions during today's session, please just pop it in the Q&A box as we go along, and we'll answer them during the Q&A time at the end. And we are recording today's session, so if you do have to jump off early, a recording will be sent around. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Andre.
Thank you, Ellie. Hey, everyone. Just before I get started, I might just tell you a little bit about my background before we get into the business, for those that might be interested in that. So I've kind of always had started run my own businesses since kind of early 20s. I've had quite a few successful businesses, a few successful exits. And I came across SharkStop through one of my businesses. So one of my businesses is a production company. And we made a documentary about how governments in Australia, two particular state governments in Australia, manage or attempt to manage the risk of shark bite in Australia, and that's through lethal means, through killing a bunch of sharks. I made a documentary on that. Through the process of making the documentary on that, I did media and PR and things. Was on Sunrise and all those sorts of programs promoting the film. Around the same time that the founder and the inventor of SharkStop, Hayden, was also doing interviews with media when the fabric had first been tested, and I guess had proof of concept that, hey, this could be a way to protect people from sharks. So long story short, a journalist introduced Hayden, founder and inventor of SharkStop, and um, I took the opportunity to help to invest, make an angel investment, and help Hayden commercialize it. So from a fabric that had been tested on real sharks and in the laboratory by the top shark scientists in the world, and actually turned it into a product, actually turned it into a commercializable, sellable, marketable product. That was a few years ago now. Through there, we've been through a bit of a growth phase. Kickstarter program, so on and so forth. I'll get into that more through this. But that's my involvement. I just wanted to explain that little bit of backstory and a little bit of my history. So very passionate about the ocean, very passionate about helping humans and sharks to coexist safely in an environmentally friendly and eco-friendly way. And through a weird consequence of a series of events, here we are. So really excited to tell you more about the business today. So what we're about at SharkStop, I want to lead with that. So it's a little bit more than just making shark bite resistant wetsuits. So our mission is to empower ocean users with the confidence to live out their adventures freely. Now, the risk of shark bite is quite small, statistically speaking, but it's on a lot of people's brains. A lot of surfers think about the man in the grey suit. It's on people's minds, and it does stop people from enjoying the ocean. So a big part of that is not only bringing safety and protection to ocean users, but bringing confidence back. So we help people to fear less and enjoy the ocean more, hopefully create more advocates for Planet Ocean, because that's what I feel we need. We went through an ocean impact, ocean health accelerator program, was one of our first steps. And yeah, we're really passionate about the flow-on effects that this can have, getting more people in the water, more people comfortable, less people scared, and what that can do for the planet as a whole by having more people connected with the ocean and nature. So sorry, I went the wrong way. So, like I just touched on, shark bites are rare. We're not a business to overhype the risk of shark bite and try and create fear as a way to create sales. That's not us, to be very frank. We acknowledge shark bites are extremely rare. You're more likely to have a car accident on the way to the beach than you are to be bitten by a shark at the beach. But when they do occur, they are heavily reported, as I'm sure you know, they're heavily reported by media in terms of other things that happen in society, other things that hurt people or occasionally kill people. They're significantly overreported. They do make good headlines. They are very good for clicks and views, which is what the media is all about. All of that, generates a societal fear that is somewhat disconnected from the actual statistical likelihood of something happening, and it can deter people from enjoying the ocean. Having said that, it is it is something that does happen. When it does happen, it's horrible. It's horrible for the victim. It's horrible for their friends, for their family, for whole coastal communities. It really does resonate deeply and send shockwaves through a whole community. It can have a negative impact on tourism. So not downplaying that at all, but also acknowledging that sharks aren't out there hunting us and sniffing for human blood either. So the invention, essentially, it is a composite that goes together with neoprene, and the entire thing together is what we have patented and what we have protected. So all wetsuits, all neoprene generally have a layer of laminate, what they call laminate. It's a textile that goes inside and outside the actual neoprene itself. The exception to that being open cell wetsuits, where they don't put essentially, I'm oversimplifying here, but they don't put laminate on the inside, so you have the neoprene directly against your skin. But largely speaking, you have a protective layer inside and outside. Sorry, you have a textile layer inside and outside. Our invention is a protective layer. It is a puncture proof, tear proof. It's an extremely strong textile that goes on the inside and outside, and it has been thoroughly tested by independent scientists. That testing was funded by New South Wales Department of Primary Industries, who's responsible for shark mitigation in that state. So I won't go too detailed into the tech, but basically the important thing to understand is protective layer, neoprene, protective layer. That is fundamentally how we're doing it. We also tested single layer protective, single protective textile layer, and then just neoprene, and it is not even comparable in terms of protection offered. You might think it's half, like it's got 50% of the protective layers. It must provide about half the protection. No, it's significantly less. The two layers seem to provide an exponential improvement in performance when you're talking about bite resistance and bite protection. So here's a little box plot in terms of how much it outperforms normal neoprene and a competitor that was tested. So this is from a peer-reviewed study done back in 2019, I think, is when the original testing happened. On great white sharks, and also laboratory testing with a white shark tooth on a hydraulic press. It's been tested in the real world. It's been tested in the laboratory. It is far, far, far superior to normal neoprene, as you would expect, and also to the competitor that was tested during that same testing. Now, the question became how you turn that invention into a wetsuit that's wearable and usable for multiple ocean, all the different ways that people use the ocean, be it diving, be it surfing, whatever it be, kite surfing, foiling. How do you turn that into a product that's wearable for those use cases and protects the highest risk areas? We were guided in that from another study, a different study that we were not involved in, didn't involve our fabric at all. That basically went and looked at all the shark bites that have happened over quite a long period of time and looked at where those bites happen. So as you can see through here, legs are by far the highest percentage of where bites occur, and then it kind of goes torso and arms pretty closely. So we use that to inform a wetsuit design. First of all, our prototypes, and then refining to make sure that they're wearable and paddleable and whatever else they need to be. So protecting the high risk areas. in terms of where sharks are actually biting, and also protecting the high risk areas anatomically speaking. People don't get, I guess, how do I put it? People don't get devoured by sharks and entirely consumed by sharks. Usually, it's one bite, shake, maybe a second bite, and then that's where it ends. And the reason people unfortunately pass away from those incidents sometimes is blood loss. It all comes down to blood loss. The name of the game in making shark bites survivable is reduce blood loss. So that's why shark bites are survivable, where you have more survivable, where you have lifeguards at those same beaches, for example, because you can get quick medical intervention. People there are trained on how to tie tourniquets and stop bleeding. Um, our approach is obviously to stop that significant bleeding in the first place. So protect the high risk areas, both bite percentage wise and also anatomically. Protect those areas from shark teeth penetrating all the way through and that significant blood loss occurring, which is what leads to fatality in most shark bites. One question we get is, what about bone breakages? What about other injuries? Now, this isn't a super common question, but there's always going to be cynical consumers. There's going to be early adopters that see this and see the merit in this and see the potential in this and go, I love it. How has no one thought of this before? I'm all in. And then there's going to be the cynics, of course, or the later adopters. The cynics focus around, what about bone breakages? What about this? What about that? So this is a quote from Dr. Charlie Hooverneer, one of the leading scientists involved with the testing. So while internal injuries and bone breakage may still occur, the fabric will reduce substantial and critical damage from shark bites. This highlights the ability of bite-resistant material to reduce injuries, hemorrhaging, and tissue loss. Which from the large predatory shark species responsible for most of the severe and fatal bites in Australia. So the name of the game is keeping people alive. Now, like any safety product, it can't prevent any injury. You don't criticize airbags because they don't stop you from breaking your leg, or you don't criticize seat belts because they don't stop you from breaking your arm. A product like this is designed to absolutely minimize injury to the maximum extent possible. In the case of shark bite, fatal injuries, which are from blood loss, but they're not going to make you Iron Man. They're not going to make you Superman. They don't make you impervious to absolutely everything, especially when you're talking about a large white shark or tiger shark. So that's an important thing to understand. And I think one of the reasons we went with CSF, to just take a tangent for a moment, one of the reasons we went with CSF is we don't just want new investors, we want new advocates as well. So I think that's why I'm going into some of this detail and being quite transparent about what some cynical, I don't know whether you'd call them potential customers or not, depending how cynical they are, but what some cynical people might, try and pick holes in the product is because we're trying to build advocates as well as get investors in board. And if you understand what the criticism can be and what our position and what the scientific position is, excuse me, on those criticisms, I think that's really important as well. So how are we going so far? $500,000 of revenue to date. We've got some LOIs signed with both wetsuit brands and distributors who want to carry our product, either distribution within entire countries or entire regions, or retailers within countries or regions. We have had some investment to date. Some of that was me, my angel investment at the very, very beginning of this story that I touched on at the start of this presentation. And then two other segments were from basically another sophisticated investor, and also some of it is from an Ocean Impact accelerator program that I mentioned earlier. I'll show who that is a little bit later. So we've sold over 500 wetsuits, 20 countries, plenty of website visitors. That number's not quite right because it doesn't include our entire Kickstarter campaign, which is how we first launched. So that's just basically post Kickstarter. Yeah. So initial commercialization success. We launched through Kickstarter initially. Like I said, we generated around $250,000 worth of sales through that Kickstarter alone. And that was a really good learning experience for us. So the manufacturing process of delivering all those wetsuits taught us some hard lessons, to be very frank. And we ended up moving OEM manufacturing providers after Kickstarter. So the business has kind of been in two phases for now: the Kickstarter launch and then delivering on the Kickstarter, which was yeah, not without its ups and downs. Then essentially resetting, relaying the groundwork for now to go and build a proper ongoing commercially sustainable business. So yeah, that has been challenging, but we're through the hard part now. All the foundations I feel are laid for a really strong business. We're working with better partners. We've learned a lot of the hard lessons. We've been tripped over a bunch, broken our nose on things, been punched in the mouth a heap, and I think we're really in a strong place now, much better for it. Um, so after the Kickstarter, we were not taking online sales for a while because we were focused on delivering that Kickstarter, which had its bumps. Um, since then, we have gone to a normal e-commerce model through a normal website sales. We don't spend a whole heap on marketing at the moment at all. We can scale our sales. We've noticed from little experiments we've done, we can scale our sales quite quickly if we double down on our marketing. But we hadn't done that intentionally while we were ironing out on our kinks. No use creating a heap of demand while you can't deliver a product that meets our standards. So overall, really good feedback to the product. Other than what I touched on before, some of the bumps early in the piece, but really good feedback to the product we're shipping now. Really good feedback to customer service that we're shipping now. Really good feedback in terms of how it wears, how it feels, the quality of how it's made. Like I touched on before, the science is solid around this. And the little skepticism that there is more around what about bone breakages? What about this? What about that? So yeah. Here's a few testimonials. I'm not going to read this for you word for word, but here's just three happy customers. Basically, you'll see a bit of a trend in them. You see a trend that they got some comfort back in the water. You'll see a trend that the flexibility was better than they expected. Obviously, with a protective product like that, you may be expecting it to be quite bulky and not that stretchy. Whereas this does impress. And yeah, being able to get people back in the water is such a key thing, especially when they're from a high risk sharky area. Now, we don't want people to use this product and basically think they're Iron Man and not worry about making smart decisions as well as to when to be in the water and maybe when it's smarter not to be in the water. But in a normal day, not a high risk time for sharks, to get people back in the water is the goal. It's what we're trying to do. Not for people to think they're Superman, like I said. Media really seem to like this product. So like I said before, when it comes to shark bites happening, they really report on that a lot. And anything related to sharks, they seem to really like to sink their teeth into as well, pardon the pun. So yeah, this product got a lot of traction on initial launch. Two phases, we've had a lot of traction so far. The initial testing results, when it showed that this product has real merit and is significantly better than normal neoprene. And then also our Kickstarter campaign got quite a lot of when we first commercialized and this product was first made available to the average Aussie, that also got a lot of media attention. Usually, sometimes we're interviewed in these pieces. Sometimes it's the scientist. So usually, Dr. Charlie Huveniers from Flinders University is better at explaining the science and the testing than we are, and more credible at doing so. So yeah. Okay, so current investors, like I said, we went through an accelerator program. That was the Ocean Impact Accelerator Program by OIO, Ocean Impact Organization. That also came with an investment. One of our early investors as well was Rodney Fox Shark Expeditions. They're down in South Australia. They were the vessel that was used for a lot of the testing. A lot of the white shark testing happens down there with those sharks and on that vessel. And then Pelagic Divers Formula from the Maldives also invested, seeing the merit in the product. And yeah, a really good strategic partner for us, A, in the Maldives, and B, they have year-round access to tiger sharks. Yeah. The market opportunity, I think, is quite substantial. You see a couple of numbers there on terms of how big the current wetsuit market is and how big it's likely to grow to, and we we see that we can take a significant share of that through this product if we have the resources to grow and scale properly. We don't see, and I'll get to this shortly, we don't see that being all through our wetsuit sales. We really think the correct path to taking a good share of that market and protecting as many ocean users as possible is us making some wetsuits, absolutely, but also partnering with other wetsuit brands and licensing our tech and our trademark to other wetsuit brands so that they can incorporate some panels in the high risk areas that we spoke about before into their wetsuits. Maybe not all their wetsuits, maybe not their whole range, but select models in their wetsuits, maybe on the upper end of their range. We really see that as a path forward as well. We think that's important to get as much of that market as possible. That takes us to the next point, which is business model. So currently it's all B2C. Was Kickstarter, then we had a little pause, rebuild, and then it was e-commerce. But I think a lot of our future growth is around B2B. That'll be fabric licensing to brands, like I just touched on, working with importers and distributors and retailers to be able to get our product not just available in online context, but also in retail presences, because I think that's important, especially for a kind of a product like this that's on the cutting edge of development. I think people want to see it, want to touch it, want to try it. There are margin challenges that come with going through those challenges, going through those channels, excuse me, because obviously everyone needs to make money along the way. So margin's going to be a challenge, but that's something we feel we can solve, as well as direct sales. Look, we've also got some good dialogue going with some defense forces, some police forces, things like that, who are trying our product, and we think that's a really, really good use case for this as well. People who spend, and commercial divers, people who spend a lot of time in the water. Obviously the low risk of shark bite is going to increase the more time you spend in the water. There is also the in a business context, if you're a commercial diver or something like that, there's also extra WHS, workplace health and safety considerations that come into it, where there's an obligation for employers to protect their staff from risks. Whereas for you personally, whether you want to wear this wetsuit or not, that's a personal choice. But there's legal and legislative considerations in an employee context. So yes, R&D pipeline. Okay, there's more testing to happen on other species of shark, tiger sharks. That has happened but is not published yet. And then bull sharks has not happened yet. We have seen results for tiger sharks, very promising, but nothing is published yet. It has to go through the peer review process and be published in a scientific journal before we talk about that too much. But very good. We want to be able to expand our product line as well. We got so much demand. People are saying, what about this? Could you make this? Could you make that? We really only have two wetsuits at the moment, a front zip locker style and a back zip that we get questions for. We get questions for two pieces. We get questions for, well, you see the list there. I don't need to read all of it out. We also want to develop our technology in terms of can we get more protection out of it, and can we make it more flexible? So that's something that we want to do. That probably will only happen if we're in the upper end of the amount our target range for this raise, to get some material scientists or something and really try and go to, I guess, version 2.0 of this fabric. It'd be great. It would be really good. But I don't want to talk down where we're currently at with the product. Where we're currently at with the product is incredible protection, pretty damn good flexibility, but can always be better, and I'd love for it to be better. So the team is very lean at the moment. Myself and my wife, Sarah, we've worked together before in some of the other businesses that I mentioned before. I've had successful exits together before. So I won't talk too much about myself there because I've already talked about myself at the beginning. But Sarah comes from a more corporate background than me. Like I said, I've kind of always run my own businesses, never really worked for anyone since leaving uni. Sarah originally came from a corporate background. Is very good in the B2B context, dealing with larger commercial enterprise government type buyers. Also has a degree in consumer behavior and psychology. Won a lot of bids and contracts and tenders in a previous role, basically at a sports architecture firm. So winning yeah, winning jobs to design some of the coolest stadiums we've seen around the world. So I was responsible for the bids on those and successfully winning the design work on those. So I'm also more of a big picture kind of thinker. Sarah's more of a details person, so it seems to go quite well. Hayden, who's not on this slide, who I mentioned at the very start of the presentation, Hayden was the inventor of the fabric, was the founder. That's who I invested with originally as an angel investor. He's still director of the business, but is not involved in the day to day. But we have his full support, and he's loving what's happening with his idea, his invention. So, yeah. So our round, we're looking to raise around the mil. That may change a little. We may slightly raise that, maybe 1.2, 1.3 when the offer actually opens. Obviously, refer to the actual offer document when that goes live. What do we need to do? Well, as you can see, it's a very, very, very lean team at the moment, so we need to build that team. I'm big on systems and processes and things like that. So all the knowledge is already out of our brains and into systems and processes. It's just that we're still doing it all, but we need to build out a team. And we obviously want that team to bring expertise that we don't currently have as well. I think that's going to be really important to making this as great as it can be. So building out the team, then boost brand awareness. So marketing. I really want to build strong brand around SharkStop. So the analogy I like to use is that Australian audiences understand is crim safe. So the security screens, there's a lot of that's a very, very, very strong business. There's a lot of knockoffs now. There's a lot of cheaper security screens around, but they have a very, very strong, very, very healthy business because they were first to market. They do a lot of marketing around how good they are. And their tagline of, if it's not crim safe, it's not crim safe. I picture something else for SharkStop. I picture that if in a few years' time there are competitors, try and come along and try and do what we're doing. We have patent protection, so they can't do exactly what they're doing. But if they find a different way to try and mitigate from the risk of shark bite, I hope that we've built some strong brand around it. And if it's not SharkStop, well, it may, there's a bit more skepticism towards it, which I think is earned through the amount of testing we've done and through being first to market and the amount of marketing we're going to do. We also want to, like I touched on before, expand our product line. So we're only meeting a fraction of the demand at the moment for a fraction of ocean users. We want to expand that significantly. That's about all for me. I didn't want to go too detailed. There'll be a lot more info in the offer doc. Yeah, would love to hear your questions. I'd love to make this as interactive as possible.
Amazing. Thanks, Andre. That was so great. It's such an interesting story into the background of the business. And yes, super excited to get stuck into some questions. If you haven't already, you see the bubble at the bottom of the screen. Pop your questions in there and I'll go through and read them out. But kick off with the first question. And the first two are actually quite similar and they fall under the same kind of umbrella. And it's saying, as a laminated product, do you see expansion into adventure, motorcycle, or safety clothing? And along the similar thread, we've got another question here saying, are you looking to expand into spearfishing and scuba divers, etc.?
Look, so yeah, good questions, very valid questions. We do get this question a bit. Our expertise and our testing and all, I guess, the IP we have is around the use of that protective textile, that laminate with neoprene. So our absolute first priority and our absolute number one focus is anything ocean related and anything wetsuit related because yeah, bonding it to neoprene, how it works with neoprene, how to make a wetsuit out of it that's actually wearable but provides protection, so on and so forth. That's where a lot of our IP is. In terms of other uses for this protective textile, potentially that is something we could look at in future. However, our protection, our IP protection around that may not be as strong. And there are other textiles that are pretty good in some of those, like the motorcycle, I think was one example. Kevlar is pretty good in that context, to be very frank with you, but Kevlar doesn't work in water. That's what makes our IP so strong. And this invention so strong for wetsuits is Kevlar does not perform well in water. It gets heavy and it's not very flexible. Yeah, I guess the short answer is absolutely expanding within ocean users for sure. Outside of that, potentially down the road. However, it is a slightly trickier proposition because in non-water uses, there are other good textiles.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Andre. Moving on to the next question, which is where is manufacturing currently slash intended to be located for Shopstop?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So the textile is manufactured in Taiwan, and the wetsuit, the finished goods, are manufactured in China. So we originally were manufacturing in Australia, but that was not a viable solution for us ongoing. There's a lot of challenges that came with that. Not even necessarily cost, to be very honest with you, other challenges. So the product that we're getting from our current manufacturer is incredible, really, really good. Yeah, I think that we do probably plan to diversify maybe a little bit so that we don't have all our eggs in one basket for future. But in terms of actual product that's coming out of there now, quality of the product, also their ability to meet the volume, is second to none. Very, very good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And another question around sort of fabric and the patent on that. Is it only patented in the US, in Oz, sorry, or is it patented somewhere else, for example, the USA?
Yes, it is in the USA, and basically 8 jurisdictions is where we've got it. It'll all be in there. It'll all be in the offer document if you want to see. But it's Australia, USA, basically big surfing and diving markets, is where we chose. So South Africa. Yeah, I don't have the list right in front of me right now, but it'll all be in the offer document. It's basically eight key regions, 8 key markets.
Absolutely. And if anyone wants to find out more about the offer document in more detail, that will go live when the offer goes live on the 4th of Feb, for as long as you've registered your expression of interest whilst it's still in its private phase. Next question. So, Sharkstop currently has 3mm suits. Have you any other millimeter suits on the horizon?
Yes. So 5mm are essentially getting manufactured now, if not start. No, not right now because it's Chinese New Year. Immediately after Chinese New Year, the 5mm mass manufacturing run will happen. We've been prototyping those over the last few months. So 3mm at the moment, 5mm coming. We probably also will need to do a 7mm, I think. And then also broaden the range as well, not just thickness of millimeter, but also the type of suits we're doing. So the good thing about our protection is we've even had some customers, one commercial customer out of the US, a government body, ask about a 10mm. So it's all doable. It's all absolutely doable. But yeah, 5mm coming very soon, 7mm probably soon after that.
And does the mill impact the performance? We've just had another question that's kind of along the same stream. Can you explain the differences between them?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. So what we found is so the testing was done on 3mm and 5mm already,
Right.
and no significant statistical difference between the protection. Weirdly enough, the 3mm actually performed slightly better, but obviously you're talking about. I wouldn't read too much into that. It's not like thinner neoprene can somehow magically provide more protection. It's just the fact that you're testing on real sharks. Obviously, each one's going to bite slightly differently, and maybe harder, maybe softer, maybe with a different part of the jaw. So yeah, there wasn't a statistical difference really in neoprene thickness that it introduced. All the protection does come from the textile, but yeah, that's a valid question, and no, basically.
Yeah. I think everyone's like a lot of questions are coming up around the material and kind of because it's so new and it's so exciting, they want to know the ins and outs of it. And we had another question that's here that's saying, can the material, if in an instance that would need to be cut during a first responder situation?
Excellent question. Very, very good question. It, it's not easy to cut, obviously, by design. That causes us serious manufacturing headaches and stuff as well. However, look, it could be cut, but you don't need to.
Yeah.
Because the entire wetsuit, there's a point actually that maybe I didn't make clearly enough before, so I apologize. But the entire wetsuit isn't made out of this material. So we do it in we talked about where the highest risk areas are for the for shark bite and also anatomically speaking.
Mhm.
That's where we have shark stop paneling, and then other areas, low risk areas, we do have normal neoprene. So long story short, you can always cut off via the normal neoprene panel. So for example, on the inside of the arm for better stretch, we have a thin strip of normal neoprene because all your protection is provided by around the outside of the arm where the shark would come from. It's a very thin strip just to allow a little bit more flex of normal neoprene. That's where EMT scissors or something could go up and cut it straight off you.
Awesome. Amazing. And a quick one, I think you may have covered this in your presentation. I know it's in your pitch video. Just wondering around what the price of something like this is to purchase.
Yeah, a very good question. Price point's something where yeah, we are working on. So there's two trains of thought. So basically at the moment they're around $1,000 is the price point for one of these wetsuits. Um we would like that to come down with economies of scale as we start making more and selling more of these. We would like that to come down and ideally be slightly more competitive with a normal high-end wetsuit like a Patagonia wetsuit or something like that.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think for some wetsuits and for some designs and for some use cases, for perhaps maybe commercial ones, I I I think it almost needs to go the other way. I think we need to be more of a premium product. So yeah, I know the question was around current price point, but I also wanted to share some of my other thinking on where we need to go with it. So yeah.
Mm. Amazing. I'm getting a few questions in the Q&A section, which is looking around sort of timeline and profitability. And just to flag to everybody on the call, as mentioned earlier, all information on this will be in the offer document when the offer goes live on the 4th of Feb. For as long as you've signed up to the expression of interest campaign, you'll have access to view the offer document before it goes public to the audiences on 2 days following. Moving on to my next question, what depth can you go in this suit? Is there sort of a range there, or is it endless?
Look, essentially similar to, I guess we're talking in a diving context here, potentially a scuba, I don't know, maybe a free diving context, but essentially similar. It performs very similar to normal neoprene. It will crush with depth, like all neoprene does. But we do use a very good rubber. We use a Yamamoto rubber inside the in between our laminate. So it is, yeah, similar to any other high-end wetsuit, essentially. And from
Amazing.
a free diving context, that will maybe the question was around buoyancy there, because as the neoprene crushes, you do lose a bit of buoyancy. But yeah, just think of it as any old wetsuit in that
Yeah,
sense.
amazing. And when you were talking about sort of connecting with other wetsuit brands, are you able to let us know any ones that you're connecting to? For example, the big ones like Rip Curl or Quicksilver, or is that all still in the works and being
No,
out?
look, I can't. Those that we are speaking with, we are kind of under confidentiality at the moment. But what I can say is at the moment it's mostly mid-tier brands. So those kind of mid-range that have really, really strong followings and people really love the brand, but we're not talking yet to a Rip Curl or a Billabong or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, mid-tier brands that are very dedicated to one particular niche of ocean use. It might be a dive brand, it might be a surf brand, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I have a question here that's an interesting one. It says, how does the force tolerance of the material compare to the force of a shark bite? Not just the force tolerance, but of other wetsuits. It could be, and they suggested it could be very powerful visually to see this on the same bar chart for different shark types. Because saw you mentioned going into the different shark types like tiger sharks, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, so great white. I don't have all the numbers in front of me for this, but great whites obviously do have a pretty significant bite force on them.
Yeah.
When you essentially, this is a really good question. I might go on a couple of tangents here, but bear with me. When you look at the actual bite force, because this was measured during the testing, basically there was a pressure plate inside of our fabric to measure the bite force. So bite force is obviously very significant. However, what you need to remember is you need to divide that bite force by how many teeth there are, because the points of the teeth are the only actual contact points where all that force is coming through. So when you take the bite force and divide it by how many teeth are going to be making contact, now this could change from bite to bite. It could be the side of the jaw, it could be the whole jaw, it could be whatever. When you divide that, in a lot of cases, we're getting no penetration at all. Absolutely none. And when we are getting penetration, it's only a tiny little amount, like a pinky size kind of hole. And this is where the fabric is also really strong. It is also really important to understand its benefit is generally a shark will either it'll be a test bite and then go away, or if there's more intent behind the bite, it'll be a test bite and a shake. The really important thing to understand about this fabric is even if there's a tiny bit of penetration, the tip of the tooth does come through on the shake, it won't rip any further from there, basically. So not only is it puncture resistant, but it's also cut and tear resistant. So normally if you get a bit of puncture go through and then the shake, that's where stuff usually goes very sideways. Because normal neoprene does not withstand that side to side tearing action of the shake very well at all.
Yeah.
Whereas Shark Stop does. You basically, if you get a tiny bit of tooth penetration, then there's a shake. It stayed essentially at the same size as the tooth. Obviously, tooth being a triangle, it's proportional to how deep that tooth went. But very small holes, very impressive compared to neoprene. I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I've got a few more questions on the material itself. The
Mhm.
first one being, does the material make the wetsuit more buoyant or less?
Yeah, good question. No, it doesn't seem to have any effect on buoyancy. We've had a lot of feedback on this, basically from from our own testing, but then B from customers, and are like, yeah, it makes no difference. There's been other fabrics tested in the testing that some are metal based.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't even call it a textile. It's not a textile. It's a metal piece that will slide in. Now these aren't commercially available to my knowledge, by the way. This product's never actually been commercialized. But there might be metal products that slide into a pocket of a wetsuit or something like that. I'm also aware of that approach. That obviously has a significant impact on buoyancy. But ours does not. No.
Amazing. Amazing. I think, yeah, the questions around or just the information that what people want to know around the wetsuit material is so interesting because it's all just so new and innovative. We've got another one here that says obviously the first wetsuits are steamers and suitable for cold environments. Can the fabric be used with warmer wetsuits, for example, thinner spring suits or bodysuits?
Yes, they can. So I'll answer that question in two parts. One around the thickness of the neoprene that it can be laminated to. So we've gone as thin as 1 mil. So that is technically possible and it's wearable and it works. So it can go on thinner neoprene. In terms of doing springies or something like that, I mean, if you're talking about like short arm, short leg, it starts to become an interesting proposition where is there point providing protection to like just an upper leg and just a torso when you've got forearms free and lower legs free. That's something for us to consider, and that'll be part of our R&D journey hopefully after this raise, is to, yeah, whether that makes either practical sense or commercial sense to go and do a product like that. I'm not sure if that's what you meant with spring suits, whether you meant the short ones, but yeah, providing really good shock protection to part of the body and then having the rest totally exposed. It's an interesting proposition. So that's something we need to consider. I'm not totally set on that yet.
Interesting. Okay, and I had a question as well, actually. It's been awesome to work with you guys, and I know community is at the heart of everything you guys do. How are you going to keep that at the heart of your business and industry as you grow?
Yeah, absolutely. Very good question. So, at the moment, we have, like I said early when I talked about our sales and our e-commerce sales and how little marketing we're doing, that's a resource issue, basically. Like it all boils down to a resource issue. There's not enough people and not enough time for us to do everything at the moment.
Yeah.
After this raise, when we do grow a team, that is something I would really like to focus on, to A, increase our marketing, but B, as an offshoot of that or as part of that, have have some sort of community management, build some sort of community around it. I'm not totally sure how we're going to do that yet. I'll probably be relying on a marketing hire to propose some stuff to us. I'll give you an example. During our Kickstarter campaign, we had an insider group. So we basically ran our marketing a significant amount of time before the Kickstarter opened, similar to
Yeah.
this EOI campaign, and everyone on Facebook went in a everyone that was on Facebook was invited to join an insider group, and that was kind of what you're saying. There was a bit of community built in there, a bit of excitement and positive and constructive chat around the product in there. Something like that I would like to do. The other way I'd like to do this is education. So there's more to just putting on a wetsuit on and thinking you're now invincible. I'd like to build some community around educating on shark smart behaviors, warning signs as to when it could be a sharky time of day. Maybe it's best not to be in the water, high risk time, so on and so forth. I think there's something to be said for that and built around that. Some governments attempt to do it with their shark smart messaging and their shark smart campaigns, but I think it can be done better, and I think we can establish ourselves as kind of a thought leader by leading that and doing that better. So yeah, that's a couple of initial early thoughts, but definitely a big part of what we want to do, and especially this group of investors and shareholders. I really want to build community amongst that and advocates from that, not just wanting people's cash. It's much
Yeah,
more for us.
absolutely. It's a two-pronged approach, really. It's educating mind and protecting body. Like it's the full holistic approach, which is awesome.
The way to put it. I might borrow that.
Yeah. Um, we've got some questions here that's looking into sort of referring back to your presentation that you mentioned with this raise, you want to expand your team. What kind of roles would you be looking to fill there? Like what expertise do you want around the table?
Look, absolute priority. First two for us that I think are very, very important are B2B sales. We really want to be focusing on and someone ideally with dive industry or surf industry or both expertise, because I think there's so much potential out there that we're really not tapping into yet. And the second one, the most important one, equal most important one is marketing. We're really not doing enough. Resource constricted at the moment, obviously, but we could be doing so much more, and we need this name synonymous with shark safety and shark protection. So those two are important to us. If we're on the up end of the raise, I talked about improving our technology. So that would be then we bring in a material scientist or something like that. That may be an employee, that may not. We may partner with maybe university or something like that on something like that. But those are really the big priorities, marketing and sales to me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I've got a question here that's kind of looking into will investors be offered exclusive access or encouraged with any promotional opportunities? Again, with this question, all the information on that will be in the offer document when it goes live on the 4th of Feb. Just ensure that you've signed up to express your interest so you have early access. Looking on to another question, I think there's a lot of questions around ocean temperatures. I think is a common theme that I'm seeing here in terms of testing in cold or warm water. I've got a question here that says in the tropics, it's common to use a lycra only suit, so similar to a stinger suit with no neoprene. Is the protective layer able to be adhered to other materials like lycra? And apologies if you covered that in your section around the material.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I don't feel I did really, and it's a very valid question. Yeah, look, technically speaking, yes. Lycra. The thing to remember with lycra and with neoprene, to be honest, is lycra is a very stretchy material. This laminate will slightly restrict that stretch, so it does slightly change it, but that's fine. That's why we do prototypes. That's why we do R&D to make sure you still have enough stretch in the right areas. So, long story short, technically speaking, absolutely. Having said that, yeah, look, it really depends on the context too. If you're talking like a stinger suit for say snorkeling, where you're always on the surface, yeah, absolutely. But for diving, if you're going to go deeper, it obviously gets colder. So maybe without having too crazy big a range, especially not initially, potentially like a 1 mil wetsuit or something may work in that kind of context as well. That'll be something for us to explore with tourism operators who might have these wetsuiters rentals and those kinds of things as to what product would work for them. Because yeah, there is a volume consideration when we're releasing anything new. So you do have to make quite a few hundred or thousands of stuff, not tens and twenties. So that's always a consideration. But back to full circle, back to the original question. Technically speaking, sure, there is just technical considerations around what it will do, stretch wise and wearability wise, and yeah, ergonomics.
Yeah, for sure. And in looking at sort of the layering of the fabric, etc., someone we've got a question that's saying, what's the process for the quality control? And I've seen videos of kind of you guys testing, which I love, so it'd be great for you to go into that on this call. How do you conduct random tests and do you conduct random tests when they arrive?
Yeah, we do, and you'll have to excuse me for not remembering right now off the top of my head the exact QC criterias that our OEM manufacturers use. But basically, there's a check of basically every linear meter that's made. They do certain checks, and there's a certain level of like blemishes or issues that are a pass, and if you have more than that, it's a fail. So, absolutely, there's pretty damn good QC processes in terms of the raw material being made and also the actual finished goods being made. Um, Having said that, obviously we warrant all our products. So if there is a manufacturing fault on a wetsuit or something, and there's a failed seam or something like that, we fully warrant that.
Mhm. Awesome. I have a question here, and it might be a little harder to go into. I guess it's a big question, but I think it's good to kind of set this tone for Shark Stop and what you guys do. Have you thought how you will handle a situation if someone does get bitten in the suit and does not survive? Understanding there is no guarantee the suit will always save lives, and how a brand can handle that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, key risks are disclosed in the offer document, and this is one of those brand risk or reputational risk because,
Wow.
like any airbag or like any, any safety device, hard hat, safety boot, doesn't matter. There is no guarantee, and that would be a challenge messaging wise. Obviously, we feel confident in some messaging that we would have pre-prepared. Having said that, we hope it never comes to that. And if you look, that's obviously the way to look at the risk. Looking the other way around, it could also go the other way. If there is a bite in one of our products and that person survives, I can only imagine what an advocate for the brand that person would become, and so on and so forth. So obviously, we hope it never happens. Statistically, it's probably low chance that this will ever happen because of the shark bites are quite rare. But yeah, it's something we have thought about a lot and we are somewhat prepared for. However, it will be a challenge. Not going to sugarcoat that. But there is also that it can go the other way.
For sure. Thank you, Andre. Is there a expected lifespan on the suits? Can this last forever? Can it be passed down? That sort of thing.
Yeah, very good question. So I'll tackle that from a few different ways. One, in terms of actual normal durability of a wetsuit, similar to normal wetsuits, not significantly better in terms of normal workmanship and all that kind of stuff. In terms of certain use cases or certain things that wear out wetsuits, such as kneeling on rocks or reefs or whatever, and people wearing out elbows and knees and things like that, significantly better in that respect. So it is relatively abrasion resistant, significantly more so than neoprene. Yeah, there is that. And then the one thing I didn't touch on in the presentation that I will touch on here as well in terms of end of life solutions. So we do have an MOU in place with someone about exploring how we're going to recycle end of use wetsuits and recycle them into neoprene again.
Yeah.
Not high end, super high end, super stretchy, supple neoprene, but neoprene for lower end use cases, mouse mats or yoga mats or whatever it might be. So we are looking at that, and also an extension of that is we're also looking at doing that also with all our offcuts and all those kinds of things from our manufacturing process. So we'd love to kind of have a circular solution for it and be as close to zero waste or zero waste as possible. So I'm sure that wasn't the intent of the question, but I just thought I'd go there while we're talking about that. Yeah.
Awesome. No, I think that captures it. And they also asked what's the warranty, if there's a warranty on this kind of thing. Um, you obviously feel free to answer that one, but I think you answered that in full there as well.
Yeah, I mean, we just have a standard 12-month manufacturer's warranty at this stage, for, workmanship and all the usual stuff. Yeah.
Amazing. I have another question here going back to the texture and the nanofibers. Um, have Sharks not prepared or reference research to provide assurances surrounding potential consumer concerns of nanofibers and the exposure to skin?
Yes, good question. I mean, not specific in the use case of our wetsuit. No, no. So again, maybe that's something we do post raise, where we can put some more resources into that. But uh, other than existing stuff that's out there for about other products, and other clothing and so on and so forth, no, nothing specific to our product. It's a very good point, though.
Awesome, thank you. I'll close out with a couple more questions. Does the textile perform well as ripstop once it's punctured?
Yeah, yeah. So yes, absolutely. So that maybe that question came in before I talked about the penetration and the shaking, maybe after, if I didn't explain myself correctly. But yes, it is not just puncture resistant.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fabrics that are puncture resistant, but this is also cut and tear resistant. So that's the super important part. If there is a high pressure shark bite, and if some teeth do make a puncture through, um, and then the shark shakes, it's not going to completely open up like other materials would. And that's the really, really important thing, I think, to understand, because of the cut and tear resistance. Those serrated teeth, once they're in, if they shake, it's not going to keep opening it up and turn it into just, yeah, a mess like it would with other more traditional fabrics.
Yeah, for sure. Brilliant. And just the last question. So why equity crowdfunding as opposed to other funding? I know you'd mentioned that you'd done funding before that, before doing your virtual raise, but yeah, any insight into that?
Yeah, look, it's really, I think, I mean, it's a number of things. One is the community thing that I've spoken about. We don't just want investors. We want advocates, and we want, a community. The second thing is just the amount we're going for and its appeal to other funding sources. I just thought this was, yeah, this felt like the right approach. It's probably, maybe it's definitely too small for PE, for any private equity. It maybe it would have been suitable for VCs, but we just didn't want to go down that path. We felt, for the moment, this was the right approach.
Awesome. Absolutely. Well, on that, I think we will wrap. Thank you so much for Andre and Sharkstop for such an insightful presentation. And thanks to everybody that joined the call today. As I mentioned earlier, a recording will be sent around to everyone who registered in case anyone missed out or had to drop off. The expression of interest campaign from Sharkstop is live for another couple of days. So if you haven't already, jump onto the Birchal platform and check out their pitch video and company profile. The early access offer campaign will open on the 4th of Feb, so make sure you've put in your expression of interest to have access to the offer document, where all the key terms of the offer will be there before it opens to the public. Thank you from me. Thanks, Andre, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. And yeah, reach out any further questions. Keep an eye out for the offer document. Really appreciate you. Hope to have you on board. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, guys.